Welcome to the Focus and Chill podcast, where we discuss productivity tactics that work for neurodivergent individuals.
Every episode, we interview guests with lived experience of neurodiversity who also have a solid productivity and habit game, and pass the learnings on to you, our wise and benevolent audience.
We're your hosts, Jeremy and Joey.
I'm Joey, and I coach creatives to get moving on their most ambitious projects through the power of solid habits and strong focus. I'm also a perpetual student of psychology and perpetually on a quest to a one-armed chin-up.
And I'm Jeremy, a neurospicy software developer turned startup founder, building the Focus Bear app to help people with ADHD and autism thrive at work. My cool party trick is leaving parties early so I can get to sleep in time for my 2-hour-long morning routine. The Focus and Chill podcast is brought to you by Focus Bear, a focus enhancement app for ADHDers. That's adults with both combined autism and ADHD. I'm Jeremy, I'm an ADHDer myself. I'm the founder of Focus Bear and also one of the hosts of this podcast. I built Focus Bear for myself originally because I was constantly getting distracted by my phone and my laptop. I wanted a way to tame my ADHD monkey mind so I'd stop going down rabbit holes and actually get work done, but also get off my computer and my phone in the evening so I'd be able to sleep properly. It's working perfectly for me and it's helping a lot of ADHDs as well. I'd love for you to try it. It's available for Mac, Windows, iOS and Android, and it leverages most of the productivity strategies we talk about on the podcast. You can jump onto focusbear.io or just Google Focus Bear and try it out. Let me know what you think. Welcome to episode number 75 of the Focus and Chill podcast. I'm thrilled to be joined today by my friend Rebecca McCash. Rebecca is the ADHD founder and CEO of FutureTech Australia, a social enterprise with the mission of inspiring the neurodivergent minds of the future. FutureTech offers STEAM, which is science, technology, engineering, arts and math-based social and learning opportunities that are designed and delivered by neurodivergent people. Rebecca is an inclusion consultant for Aspect's autism-friendly team, member of Catalyst 2030, SECNA, and the Australian National Autism Strategy Economic Inclusion Working Group. Rebecca has worked in the disability sector for almost a decade and has a passion for genuine co-design, creating learning environments that spark curiosity, penguins, and challenging the status quo to build a better future for everyone. The penguins part, I was stuck on that for a bit. And then I realized it wasn't penguins in the learning environment, but because you love penguins.
I do love penguins. They're amazing.
The last time you came to Melbourne, or the second last time you went to Phillip Island and saw penguins from memory.
I did. It was the best day ever. Their little tip tap when they're walking back in is just the cutest thing in the world. I'm so happy just even thinking about it.
And I subsequently went and saw them as well. And I also enjoyed it.
Oh, amazing. I love it. All the penguins, all the time.
Now, let's go back to neurodivergence. When did you realize that you weren't neurotypical? A penguin in the sea of non-penguin birds.
So I think the reason that I love penguins is because I feel a bit like a penguin in the bird world. So penguins can't fly and I always felt a bit like a human that couldn't quite human. But I guess my journey with neurodivergence more generally is probably easiest to start at the beginning and come all the way to where we are at now. So my journey with neurodivergence started with my younger brother, Sam, who was diagnosed autistic and ADHD as a child. And this was my first introduction to the idea of different brains. And I became quite obsessed about learning everything I could about neurodivergence and different kinds of brains so I could support and advocate for him. Then I had a crazy rocky period throughout my teens. I was diagnosed with an eating disorder at 14 years old and was in and out of hospital a lot because of this, and also because of several suicide attempts throughout that period as well. So trigger warning for that. So I guess for me, it was really strange because I was so overwhelmed all of the time. I didn't ever really register that anything was wrong. I have real difficulty with being able to identify my inner body sensation, so that interoception. So it almost feels like for the majority of my life, I was so dissociated that I wasn't even really there. And as a result, I experienced a lot of chronic major depression, anxiety, and suicide ideation right up until I was diagnosed at 20. I hear people say that the diagnosis saved their life, and I can honestly say that without a shadow of a doubt that my diagnosis completely saved my life, provided me with this sort of framework to be able to support myself better. So I think the encouragement I always received when I was growing up and I was sad was go out, socialize, connect with people, go to the bars. And I was unaware of the fact that by doing a lot of this stuff, I was actually making myself more unwell, because as an autistic person, over socializing in busy, loud, crazy, unpredictable environments are actually not right for me. So with this framework, I was also given that kind of language to be able to advocate better for myself and be confident enough to say, like, actually, I don't want to do this. This isn't right for me. And of course, some days it definitely still feels like I'm trekking uphill in quicksand, but those days are fewer and further between because I have the right tools to be able to protect myself and pick myself back up again. It's still hard, but it's a lot easier to be able to just maintain good well-being instead of feeling so overwhelmed all the time.
Yeah, that sounds like not the best advice. I also had that advice. I don't know whether it was direct advice, but it just seemed like the societal narrative that if you want to meet people or be normal, then what you do as a 20-year-old is go and hang out in bars. And I hated those experiences. I really felt similar to what you were saying before about a human that couldn't human. It's lovely to recognize now that it's not mandatory to do that, that there are other ways to socialize. Have you found that these days that the way that you approach almost every aspect of your life is different than what you would have done in the past, pre-diagnosis?
Oh, absolutely. Everything. I used to push myself a lot to maintain a lot of social relationships, but also like going to events and going to parties or just going out, and I just don't do it anymore. I don't feel like I have to. And I have found that while perhaps my kind of circle of friends has gotten smaller, those relationships have gotten much stronger with those fewer people. I definitely think a lot of people believe that humans have to have lots and lots and lots of friends, but I actually have found that my life is a lot more manageable now that I have fewer friends that are stronger friendships and that are usually based around certain interests or commonalities. And that's another thing that I've really started to do much more of in my life since my diagnosis, just engaging in special interests and not feeling guilty about getting hyper-focused on penguins and watching the penguins videos over and over again. Whereas a lot of the time people used to say to me, like, you have to relax, go for a walk or do something like that. Whereas that doesn't relax me. Relaxing me is reading a research paper or, I don't know, like chatting about autism and neurodivergence. Like that's the stuff that fills me up. So I think I've just become much more myself, if that makes sense at all.
Yeah, I find the same, that conventional relaxation techniques almost create a really high bar, and I feel like I'm trying so hard to relax that I can't actually relax, but immersing myself in my hobbies and things that I really care about makes it much easier. Had someone say they find the term special interest demeaning, that it feels like it's the Special Olympics version where there's something childish about it. Do you have any perspective on the language around that?
I definitely have also heard people say similar things. I think the word special has a lot of connotations behind it, which people don't love. I don't personally mind the term special interests. I have heard people use things like obsessions and passions as an alternative, but I think we could probably find problems with like terminology like obsession as well. Although in some ways it feels like obsession. I think it's the most magical thing about being neurodivergent is how happy my interests make me. Like the joy is just unparalleled. I can't imagine what it would be like to not feel that happy whenever I see a picture of a penguin. I don't mind the term special interests, and I use it quite frequently, but definitely open to people who have suggestions for other types of terminology as well.
Yeah, I prefer it over obsession.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the time with language, you can always find a problem with pretty much every word if you look hard enough. So it's tricky trying to find the right ones sometimes. And I think it's just about asking what people's preferences are, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely. And whatever we call it, do you feel like these days with the work projects that you're involved in that you are able to lean into a lot more of your strengths and your special interests as well as part of your work?
Absolutely. I am like the luckiest person in the world in terms of how much I get to live and breathe my special interests when I'm working. I wear lots of different hats, which I think serves a couple of purposes. It keeps me very busy, which I like to be, and it also keeps the dopamine monster happy, which is very much that sort of I need to have new, spontaneous, exciting projects all the time because of that ADHD side of me. So being able to wear lots of different hats allows me to do that in a semi predictable, structured way. So if that makes sense. But I spend most of my time like thinking and working on FutureTech, which is my organization, my baby, I call it. FutureTech is, in a nutshell, we're a neurodivergent-led social enterprise that offers STEAM-based social learning programs to neurodivergent young people, as well as community capacity building. So going out and speaking to teachers and peers and parents with the aim of trying to support the rest of the world be better friends and colleagues and teachers and peers to their neurodivergent counterparts. A lot of the time we see autistic and neurodivergent people trying to be trained or taught how to be better at being neurotypical. So what we really are passionate about is trying to teach and show other people how cool it is to be neurodivergent through some of that work. So I get to very much be in my special interest area, which is amazing. And one thing that I've been really deep diving into lately is the idea of well-being and what does well-being look like for neurodivergent people. We have over time developed an evidence-based well-being framework that really considers like neurodivergent specific well-being metrics. For example, in traditional assessments of well-being, we might be looking at things like academic achievement as an indicator of good well-being. This might be appropriate for neurotypical people, although that is questionable. But for neurodivergent people, when we went away and thought about it, we're like, that's really not that important. But loving learning and having that insatiable curiosity for deep diving into our special interests, well, that is a protective measure for us. So for me, if I've had a really bad day, or if I've had to do a lot of socializing or masking, the thing that helps me to recover is sitting down and just completely deep diving into my special interest. And so when we started to look at some of these things, we were finding that actually a lot of the traditional well-being metrics are sometimes at odds with what we were thinking might be good indicators of neurodivergent well-being. So academic achievement, generally speaking, that is actually quite at odds with loving learning and curiosity, because a lot of young people are in school and they're being told, you must learn this and you must learn this, and here's this box and you can't go outside that box. And actually that resulting in a lot of kind of trauma around learning environments. And so young people, they don't want to learn anymore. And I'm like, that is so dangerous for neurodivergent people. That's where my main focus is at the moment. Like, how do we build this out into a framework and share it with other people so that we can have a better understanding of how to support neurodivergent people's well-being? And yeah, hopefully we can share that with schools and educators and parents so that they can be better equipped to support their people.
Yeah, that sounds so important. I've heard that a lot of the traditional psychological measures are actually not validated for use with the neurodivergent population. I heard a talk where they were discussing how the measure for social anxiety is actually, it doesn't make sense for autistic people because it asks, do you feel anxiety about going and spending time with other people? And the subtext there for neurotypical people is that it's unwarranted anxiety, that there's no reason why it wouldn't be a good thing to go and hang out. But for people, there's a reason why we might feel anxious because there's a lot of negative experiences in the past about going and socializing and not being accepted. And so it's not really unwarranted anxiety, it's legitimate anxiety. And I imagine with what you're discussing with well-being, that the traditional measures aren't really capturing it.
And I think the more I look at research and things like that, we can just see time and time again, even when there are research that's looking at things from much more of a strengths perspective, the measurements, the way that they're measuring things, those metrics still are not neurodivergent people specific. It's still things that we would be expecting neurotypical people to find helpful. So I think, yeah, it's a real kind of area under development, or there's not a lot of research out there yet, but I'm super excited to see the fact that there's more and more kind of autistic researchers doing research on autism. Like, that is so exciting because we'll start to see changes and shifts. Like, we won't be measuring how many times people make eye contact as a result of something, because actually that's not helpful at all. We'll be measuring things like, do I know when I feel overwhelmed, and do I know what I can do about it? Because that really is going to help support people much more than being able to look into someone's eyeballs.
Are you thinking about doing a formal research project around this yourself? Or is it more you'd come up with the ideas and collaborate with someone in the university?
Probably the collaboration route. I'm not a researcher myself, although I would have loved to have done some research at some point. But I think having the universities is definitely much more helpful than trying to do things all by yourself. But I would love to see someone take a look at some of the stuff that we've been doing and discovering and put it into something a bit more formal, like a research study. That would be very, very cool.
I've been debating going and doing a master's or a PhD, but it's so hard I'd love to do it, and it is my special interest myself, but I don't know that I have time to do all of the things.
I was just saying this morning, I was like, I wish I had like 5 more hours in every single day. That would be good. It's really tricky, I think, when you want to do all of the things all at once. But yeah, I'm studying a diploma of governance at the moment. My partner had said to me when I signed up that it was not a good idea because I was working and running a business and doing umpteen other things. And did I really have time to study? And he was right. I did not have time to study, but we're making it work.
Are you enjoying it?
I am enjoying it. I love studying. I'm a big nerd. That's basically what I do in my free time anyway. Sit and read and watch documentaries. Technically, I'm not doing anything differently, although there are components of the course that are a bit drier than I would generally. Like, legal stuff is quite difficult to wrap your head around. But it's also fascinating how doing this course has taught me how inaccessible governance and board positions actually are to a lot of people. It's not very autism friendly, let's put it that way. That's a whole other podcast, I think.
Yeah, you can have a panel discussion with you, and there's a guy, don't know if you've met Will, I forget his last name, but he's involved in governance a lot.
Yes, Will. Oh gosh, what is Will's second name? That's terrible. But yes, Will is amazing. I love Will.
So going back to my script, I was going to ask you about what you get up to when you're not working, and you kind of answered that you do your diplomas of governance. What do you do when you're not studying that?
So if I'm not studying, I'll be listening to audiobooks or reading new things about anything really. I just love learning. I find it like so energizing just to learn something new. I really like things like looking into neuroscience and history and psychology and politics. At the moment, I am very deep into sociological economics. which sounds really dry, but it's actually very exciting. But I will try not to get too lost down that rabbit hole because I will get very lost and we'll just end up, off on a million different tangents. I'm a dancer as well, which I find really helpful for exercise, of course, lots of happy hormones, but also just like expression and switching off for a little bit. It's really hard to think about things when you're trying to remember choreography of a dance. So I find that's a really good tool in my toolkit for well-being. I actually went last night and I feel like almost a million times better just for having gone and been able to kind of express myself in that way for a couple of hours. It'd been a couple of weeks there that I hadn't been, and I was starting to feel a little bit off, which is usually because I haven't been dancing enough. So anything where I can move my body, I really love just moving around. And I think it's really crucial for people, but I don't like going for walks in nature. I find that difficult. And unless I'm going to get to somewhere, I find the whole concept of just going for a walk really obscure. People often say to you, go outside, have a walk, meditate. I just don't find that those things are particularly helpful for me unless I have a really good audiobook to listen to and I'm walking my dog. So there's a purpose. That makes sense.
What type of dancing do you do?
I did pole dancing. I was a cheerleader for, I think, over a decade. And I loved cheerleading. I was all over the world. I competed for Scotland and Florida when I was really young, which was incredible. But unfortunately, my body just got to a point where it could not anymore with the backflipping and the, landing really harsh on the ground. So I had to give that up. And that's where I found pole. So that was kind of filled the gap for me. I would have been really lost if I had lost cheerleading and not had another type of kind of dance-esque expression to fill that void.
Yeah, it's great you found things that you enjoy and helpful to not have to stick to conventional narratives, as we were saying before, about what counts as relaxing.
Definitely. And you just find what works for you as well. I think trying lots of different things and figuring out that you don't love X or you don't love Y. One really helpful thing I find is the idea of like instant momentary mindfulness. So I can't sit and not think about anything for 10 minutes or 20 minutes or whatever, but just taking a half a second to notice that there is a really pretty pink flower that is growing in the tree outside. And that's it. That's mindfulness for me. I find that's actually a really good strategy rather than trying to sit and be with your thoughts. I mean, I personally don't want to be alone with my thoughts.
Yeah, it doesn't tend to be an attractive proposition for most ADHDs.
Right.
So in terms of things that work for you, what about when you've got a task that is not particularly exciting and you're trying to be productive during your working hours? What are the tactics that work for you and which are the ones that don't work for you that are more conventional wisdom?
I have built into my life as many safety nets as possible. And so what I mean by that is I try and offload as much of my cognitive functioning to things that can be better trusted with it than I can. So things like I have my environment set up, but I try and set up my environment in such a way that I have to get up from my desk and move to go and try and find something because I know I'll get distracted a million times on the way there and a million times back. So by having everything I sort of need, I don't have to move away. That's one thing that I find really helpful. My calendar, I'd be completely lost without my calendar. I calendar absolutely everything, appointments. I block out time for tasks as well. I also have certain types of kind of technology that I have offloaded some of the more boring, onerous, time-consuming tasks that also tend to take up a lot of that cognitive load. So Calendly, cannot speak highly enough of Calendly. It has taken so much off of my brain. Is unbelievable because that whole like emailing back and forth and back and forth. Can you do this time? Can you do that time? And waiting and then did we end up actually scheduling a time, or I've got to hold all of that stuff in my brain then, and I can't be trusted. My brain can't be trusted to hold that many things at once. So Calendly, you just send a link, they book in when it works for them, and that is it. So easy. So finding tools, bits of technology that can sort of take some of that pressure off is really, really helpful. And just through trial and error, finding different ways of working that work for me. So I have to chunk tasks, because if I start doing something and step away from it, it is so difficult for me to come back and finish it. I think partly because I've essentially got to go back to the very beginning to figure out where I was at. But also, I don't know if it's like a demand avoidance type thing. There's something about the last couple of sentences of an email or of a report or something like that I just find like so difficult to get done. And if I leave and do something else and then try and come back to do it, there's no way that it's going to be torture, like actual torture for me to finish it. So setting aside enough time to get things done from start to finish, for me, that's really, really helpful. Things I have found not helpful. One thing that I know works really well for a lot of ADHDers is body doubling, having another person with you, not necessarily helping you actively do a task, but just having another human there helps you get things done. I do not find that is the case for me. I find it incredibly distracting, awkward. I just can't do it, especially when it's on Zoom. So we work remotely in my day job. And so a lot of our meetings and things like that are done via Zoom, which is great and works really well. But doing anything body doubling wise, I can't focus. I can't get it done. So that's one thing that for me personally is not helpful.
Yeah, and I think that point about finding the techniques that will work for you is important, because it's interesting. I don't mind body doubling. I don't really like doing it with strangers. I feel the social expectation is a bit weird for me, so I don't really like using FocusMate. I sometimes find it okay doing it with other people. I think everyone's going to be a bit different, and one of the messages I've heard a lot is that you have to try a bunch of different things and find out what works for you. And it's not always going to work forever.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not going to work every time as well. I mean, honestly, the amount of times that I will schedule in my calendar as I'm making an appointment at the desk, as I'm doing it, because if I don't, I'll forget. And yet somehow I have on multiple occasions shown up to appointments at the wrong time, the wrong day, like just not at all. That's why I have that idea of as many safety nets as possible, so that if one thing fails, then hopefully something else will kind of pick it up for you and remind you. But yeah, it's finding what works for you. I think also just chatting to other people, like having community around you, so you can be like, oh, does this work for you? Oh, this really works for me, and be able to kind of learn from each other in that way. But yeah, trial and error. It takes a long time as well. Like I'm still figuring myself out. 28.
Yeah, same here. One thing that I've learned is that breaks are important. So we're going to take a quick break now.
Hi there, Focus and Chillers. Are you ready to supercharge your knowledge in the realms of creativity, tech, and psychology? Come check out my fortnightly newsletter. In each edition, you'll get quick wins and actionable takeaways that you can put into practice right away. If this sounds like you, I'd love to have you as a reader. Subscribe for your fortnightly dose of insights. The link is in the show notes. And now, let's get back to the show.
Okay, we're back from our break, and we were chatting in the break about whether there's some kind of difference in terms of the neurotype, that it may be that pure ADHD might respond better to body doubling, whereas ADHD might not like it as much. And Rebecca was just saying that routines are something that is maybe easier for people who have an autistic side. Do you want to tell us about your morning routine and how it helps you?
Yeah, definitely. I think routines are my almost like North Star. They like guide me through everything. And my morning routine is like the most sacred of all routines. So I wake up usually as early as I can, between 6 and 7. I get out of bed as soon as I open my eyes. I can't lie in bed and hit a snooze I know lots of people do it, but if I do it, I won't get back up again. So I just, as soon as my eyes are open, I'm out of bed. I have a cup of herbal tea, which is apparently better than having coffee first thing in the morning, because coffee is a stimulant. It kind of sets your stomach up and your body up for anxiety, apparently. So I always have my herbal tea. And then I usually do tidying up. I cannot work in clutter, but I'm also incredibly messy. I'm looking at my desk right now and I'm like, gosh, this is like chaos. So usually I tidy everything up first thing in the morning, and then I use the day to make a mess again and then repeat the next morning. I'll sit down and try and answer as many emails as I can for FutureTech before I start my actual day of work at 9. And I'll have like a coffee, take my doggo out for a wee, and sit down to sort of start the day. I used to be a total night owl, but I've become increasingly more of a morning person. I don't know if this is an age thing. It's not necessarily that I love mornings. I just find that I'm much more productive and I have a clearer head first thing in the morning. And I also feel a lot better throughout the day if I've got a lot ticked off at the very, very beginning. So I find that that's a really good sort of like dopamine hit right at the start. And I've lost my train of thought. I was about to start chatting about sleep, actually.
Yeah, well, I think they're quite tightly connected, because you can't have a good morning routine if you don't sleep well. So what's it like for you in terms of sleep?
So I have narcolepsy. So sleep is a little bit of a nightmare, no pun intended. So lots of people think that narcolepsy is you sleep too much. It's actually that your brain can't sit in either being awake or being asleep. So you're constantly in and out of REM, which means you never actually get any proper sleep. So I tend to only sleep for about 6 hours max at nighttime, and then I'll have a nap during the day as well. So I will listen to like sleep music, and I find at the beginning it was sleep hypnosis tracks that were really good for me, because the talking, I could focus my brain on someone talking rather than just the sort of music that didn't have any kind of focus. And that would help my brain stop churning. And I absolutely swear by my weighted blanket. I highly recommend weighted blankets for absolutely everybody. It's getting harder now that it's getting warmer, but they're amazing. I love it.
I should try it. I've got 2 blankets on, which has some weight to it, but probably not as much. How heavy is your weighted blanket?
Not heavy enough. I think it's like 7 kilos maybe. It was my partner that got it for me, and he didn't really know what he was buying, I don't think. I could do like 8 times that. I love it. I love just feeling, it's so good. That's my kind of sensory comfort. It's that pressure.
Yeah, I'll have to try it. Add that to my list of accommodations to try for myself.
You should. You will not, like, honestly, the sleep you get, it's second to none. It's very, very good.
So people want to hear more about the work you're doing and maybe your ideas around wellbeing metrics and all the other amazing things you're doing. Where's the best place to connect with you?
So the best place is probably my LinkedIn. It's just Rebecca McCash. And in terms of anything FutureTech related, we're on Facebook, Instagram. Our website is futuretechaustralia.org.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Focus and Chill podcast. To listen to other episodes, jump onto podcast.focusbear.io. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, or you know someone who'd be a good fit, email us at team@focusbear.io. Otherwise, stay focused, stay chilled, and peace out.